This is Marvin Lindsay. I'm the senior pastor of First Presbyterian Church, and I missed out on Theology on Tap tonight because we had a family emergency involving a teenager and an automobile. You know how those things go. The good news is that nobody was injured. So anyway, did want to say a few things about free will and determinism, which is what we were going to talk about tonight. And you can come at this debate or these two options in different ways. You can come at it theologically, or you can come at it from a philosophical perspective, or lately you can come at it from a scientific perspective. But let me talk a little bit about the theology, because that's what I know the best. Christianity rose up in the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, Greco-Roman people were very fatalistic. There was a very low view of free will because people thought that their fates, their destinies in life had already been determined by the stars. Astrology was really big. You can kind of see that in the New Testament because there are these wise men who are really astrologers who come to give gifts to the baby Jesus. Or there was a belief in fate, that our destiny was determined by this impersonal force called fate, and we really didn't have our choices didn't make any difference about as regards to our destiny. But Christians were saying something else. Christians were saying that early Christians were saying that human beings have free will because God wants obedience to be freely rendered. And with your free will, you can either choose to do the right thing, which is worship the one true God and obey his commandments, or you can choose to do the wrong thing. You can be an idolater and be an immoral person, and then you'll be rewarded eternally based on those decisions you made. And so this was a kind of shocking news to many people who lived in the ancient world, that their fate was actually within their own hands and depended on their own moral choices. So this was the Christian teaching, but in the 5th century along came Augustine of Hippo, and he modified this teaching. He said, yes, we have free will, and our choices do merit a reward, or do result in rewards from God. He didn't talk about merit. But the only people who have free will are people to whom God has given grace. Because he believed that when Adam and Eve sinned and ate the forbidden fruit, that they made a bad use of their will, and what they did was they passed a defective will along to all of their children. And so the human being is basically broken in terms of his or her will. Doesn't have free will to choose. Can't choose God as the highest good. Can choose, different things, but the big choice human beings can't make unless God gives them grace, enough grace to heal their wills and to create the desire to do good for the rest of their lives. So this teaching was, and basically what this leads to is the idea of predestination, because Augustine added that not everybody gets this grace to heal their will. So predestination is a kind of deterministic modification of a teaching about Christian free will, that God gives grace to some, but not all, for reasons that are known only to God, and that choice has eternal consequences for people. Now, a lot of people didn't like this teaching by Augustine. They thought it was unfair, that it made God into a kind of Roman patron dispensing favors, in kind of willy-nilly fashion. But Augustine said, look, everybody sinned. We all deserve to be punished. So if we don't get grace, we only get what we deserve. If we do get grace to heal our wills, then we have nothing to brag about or boast about. It was just a sheer gift from God, and it's not our own doing. So he thought that predestination and his teaching encouraged humility in people and encouraged people to recognize God's justice. This was the teaching that the Lutheran and the Reformed traditions in the Presbyterian, which include Presbyterian churches, kind of reaffirmed in the 16th century. Martin Luther and Reformed Christians would say that Well, we are free insofar as we can make choices. Like I can pick up this piece of paper which has my notes, or choose not to. But human beings are limited in the choices that they can make by sin. So human beings can choose maybe to do the right thing for the wrong reason, or they can choose to do the wrong thing. But they aren't puppets on a string, but their field, their range of choices, the range of their free will is very limited unless God gives them the grace to expand a field of choices to include genuine love of God and genuine love of neighbor. And Protestants fought about predestination, about the limitations of the human will for a long time. John Wesley came along in the 18th century, the father of the Methodist movement, and he argued that Christ's death on the cross kind of restored a measure of human freedom, or freedom to human beings, to enable them to accept or reject the grace of God as they chose. So that's a kind of theological understanding of free will and determinism. Christians have kind of approached this issue from the perspective of, do we have any natural capacity to choose to do good? Do we need grace? And if so, is grace given to us kind of in an inscrutable and arbitrary manner? Or is grace given to us as the result of some choice that we have the capacity to make? You can talk about free will and determinism in other ways as well. There are secular ways to talk about it. Sigmund Freud, for instance, talked about the illusion of free will, that basically everything that we do in life and in civilization is a manifestation of deep unconscious urges. The urge to have sex, the urge to eat, the deep and abiding fear of death. And these kind of largely hidden and misunderstood and not understood motivations are what drive our choices and all of our achievements in civilization. So that's a kind of secular deterministic argument. More recently, with the advent of neuroscience, there are other scientific arguments against free will. Some scientists are having studied how electrical behavior and how chemical reactions occur in the brain, say that our choices, again, my choice to pick up this piece of paper while I'm talking or to lay it down, really has already been decided by some deep encoding in my brain, encoding which we don't fully understand. And what free will is really the name that we give to our ignorance about this deep coding in the human brain that determines our choices and our actions even before we're consciously aware of them. So being a Christian in the Reformed tradition, I find those kinds of arguments intriguing. I guess I sort of lean toward the deterministic side of things. But at the same time, free will seems to be, there seems to be something for it. It seems to exist, right? I mean, we choose to eat this and not that for breakfast. We choose to go to Theology on Tap or not on a Wednesday evening. And so maybe that intuitive sense that I have some control, I can make some decisions, maybe there really is something to that. There's something in the human constitution that allows me to make those sorts of decisions. So that's 8 minutes and 41 seconds on free will and determinism. It's going to take a while for me to upload this video. Next week we'll talk about the doctrine of the Trinity. What is the Trinity? Meet us at ITAP on 9th Street in Columbia on Wednesday at 5:30, and we'll talk about that topic as our Theology on Tap series concludes for the month of May. Thanks and goodbye.